Hi, I'm Marnie Hodge, one of the development officers at Sheep Genetics, and I'll be running through the technical updates that were made to the combined land plan analysis. First, we'll start by looking at the updates that were made to the fixed effects. And fixed effects are used in the genetic analysis to adjust performance for known non-genetic impacts. Fixed effects that we use in the analysis to adjust performance include things like birth and rear type, the age of the animal at the trait measurement, the age of the animal's dam, a heterosis effect, which is also known as hybrid vigor, which is a boost in performance due to outcrossing of animals. And for some traits in the analysis, we also adjust for the body weight of the animal. AGBU explored whether it was appropriate to use a single or universal effect, or whether it was appropriate to fit breed-specific fixed effects for combined land plan. And the validation that AGBU performed showed that there was limited advantage to fitting breed-specific fixed effects, so we've decided to use a single universal value to adjust performance based on fixed effect types and levels. Similarly, this was done with heterosis as well, looking at whether breed combinations or a universal value was appropriate. And AGBU's validation showed that breed combinations had no significant effect on adjusting for heterosis, so a single universal value for heterosis adjustments is also going to be applied for combined land plan. The other enhancement that we've made for combined land plan for fixed effects is that these fixed effects are actually now going to be fit directly into the analysis model. So what this means is that for every 2 weeks when breeding values are recalculated, we will also be recalculating the impact of fixed effects on performance. So they'll be adjusted constantly based on the evolving data that's submitted and used into the Sheep Genetics combined land plan analysis run. This also means that we don't need to re-estimate them periodically, which will save time and labour when we redo enhancements in the future. And it also means that the fixed effects that are used to adjust performance are more intuitive and also more accurate as well. The enhancements made to the fixed effects for combined land plan will have a moderate impact on both the ranking between animals as well as the actual value of the ASPV itself. Next, we're going to be looking at the enhancements made to lifetime contemporary grouping for combined land plan. In the analysis, a contemporary group is used to compare the performance of an individual animal against the performance of all other animals that have had the same environment or management to figure out the genetic differences between animals. So if we have a look at the example on the screen here, this blue sheep, we would look at its individual performance for a particular trait and compare that performance to the average of the other animals that it's been run together or its contemporaries to figure out that blue animal's genetic merit. When we form contemporary groups in the analysis, we use a few different pieces of information, including the flock code, year of birth, sex, lambing group. We also split off any ET-born or embryo transfer-born animals. We age splice animals at a 35-day interval at birth and weaning traits and a 70-day interval for post-weaning or older traits. And we also look at the date of measurement and the management group that's been supplied in the data as well when we're looking at contemporary group formation. So the updates to lifetime contemporary grouping have come about with more producers recording visual traits. So what we've seen in the terminal and maternal analyses is that sometimes for a visual trait, an animal has missed a measurement, which has resulted in that animal being split out for life. So in the combined land plan analysis, we will be building contemporary groups using weight, WEC, and fleece traits. So if we look at the example on the screen here, where that animal didn't get a tail measurement between the weaning and post-weaning weights, it would have previously been split out and never compared to its contemporaries again, despite being in the same management group, but just missing that measurement. For combined land plan, where that animal misses that tail measurement between weaning and post-weaning weights, it will still remain in its contemporary group for post-weaning weights because we're only building contemporary groups for weight, fleece, and WEC traits. For combined land plan, this means that we'll have less contemporary groups in the combined land plan analysis, which is a really good thing because it means that we have more animals within each contemporary group. And that also means that we have increased effectiveness of data because we have more progeny that we're actually comparing their performance for within a contemporary group. The most notable changes though for the contemporary group formations will be for carcass traits and other later in life phenotypes, and in flocks where there's been lots of visual data recorded. The impact of lifetime contemporary grouping enhancements for combined land plan will be moderate for both the ranking between animals as well as the actual breeding value itself. We've also made updates to the genetic parameters as part of combined land plan. And in the analysis, genetic parameters underpin how the analysis actually accounts for genetic variation within traits. So we have two key genetic parameters that we use in the genetic analyses for any sheep genetics analysis, which includes the heritability, which looks at the variation in performance of an animal, which is due to genetics, and the genetic correlations between traits, which looks at the relationship, whether that's positive, negative, favorable, or unfavorable, and the strength of that relationship between traits. Agbri's also run some significant validation and research into the genetic parameters for combined land plan to look at, again, whether a single universal value or breed-specific values for genetic parameters were appropriate to use. And they found that there was no significant advantage to fitting breed-specific genetic parameters. So for combined land plan, we've used a single universal value to genetic parameters in the analysis. It's important to note too that while we have re-estimated genetic parameters and we have slightly adjusted them for the combined land plan dataset, they're quite similar to the genetic parameters that are used in the current terminal and maternal analyses. The largest changes to the genetic parameters that are used in combined land plan occur for carcass traits, and this is simply due to the fact that we have a larger data set essentially in the combined land plan analysis because we've merged two data sets together for carcass traits. The level of impact for the updates to the genetic parameters for combined land plan is moderate, again, for both the ranking between animals as well as the actual breeding value itself. Lastly, we'll be looking at how the combined land plan analysis enhancements have been made to better understand the genetic relationships between animals. And before we dive into the actual enhancements that have been made, it's important to understand how relationships between animals impact breeding values. We know that sheep share genes, with the closer the relationship having more genes in common between animals, which is seen with more genes in common shared between breeds or between populations of animals that are a lot similar. And when we're calculating breeding values, we not only look at the individual animal's performance, but we have a look at how any animals that are related to it perform as well when we calculate breeding values. So there's been quite a lot of updates made to the sheep genetics analyses over time to incorporate the use of genomics in the analysis, or a single step analysis, which essentially means that the breeding values have genomics underpinning them. And very simply put, when we have a genotype in the analysis, that genotype just enables the identification of more common genes between animals. So it enables the analysis to identify a more accurate relationship between animals. The land plan analyses, both the current terminal and maternal, as well as the combined land plan analysis, use both the pedigree information that breeders supply, as well as genomic or genotype information to describe the relationship between animals. One update that Agbri's made to better understand genetic relationships has been to genetic groups. And in the analysis, genetic groups are essentially a base population of animals that we inform when we calculate breeding values on animals that have little to no information on. So for example, if a Border Leicester was submitted to the analysis without any dam side pedigree, we could use the genetic group or the base population assumptions of how Border Leicesters perform to inform the breeding value of that particular Border Leicester that doesn't have dam side pedigree information. In combined land plan, we'll be using 36 genetic groups, which represent the breed types and population structures that are in combined land plan analysis. And for any larger breed groups, such as the Poll Dorsets, we can divide that genetic group or the base population of those animals into a 10-year window because we have more historic information for those larger breed groups like a Poll Dorset or a White Suffolk. So it's important to think about genetic groups as having a more accurate estimation of the base assumptions of an animal, which inform animals that don't have information or they're missing pedigree or something like that. So updating the genetic groups in combined land plan enables us to more accurately estimate the breeding values of those animals that don't have information provided. Another update that Agbru has made to the combined land plan analysis to better understand genetic relationships has been an update to the genetic model. which essentially means that we're able to more accurately identify relationships between breeds. And again, this is important because animals within breeds and across breeds share common genes. So this update to the genetic model has enabled us, to be able to more accurately identify relationships between animals, therefore more accurately estimate breeding values. So AgBrews updated the new genetic model to essentially predict the genotype of founding breeds or populations. And this is a term that's referred to as metafounders. And this is really important when we think about how we use those genetic groups that I just explained in the analysis. So we're able to predict the genotype or the genomic information for founding breeds that don't have genotypes based on the relationships between animals in the current day that have lots of genotypes. Another update that we've made to better understand genetic relationships between animals is to increase the weighting on the genomic relationship compared to the pedigree relationship that we use in the analysis. And this term is referred to as lambda, which means that we are placing more weighting on the genomic relationship, which is a more accurate relationship when we calculate breeding values. So for combined LAMBPLAN, we're increasing the weighting on the genomic relationship to 95%, which means that of the relationships that we calculate between animals, 95% of that will come from the genotype, where an animal has a genotype. If an animal doesn't have a genotype, then we will inform that animal's relationships between all other animals in the analysis 100% through the pedigree that's supplied by the breeder. It's really important to note that this is strictly just for relationship identification. The animal's own phenotypic performance, as well as the phenotypic performance of relatives and correlated traits, still contribute to breeding values. When we think about the combined LAMBPLAN analysis and how we're better able to understand genetic relationships, combining the terminal and maternal data sets isn't just about bringing the data together to create greater head-to-head comparisons. It's actually about more accurately being able to identify relationships between animals, which means a more accurate breeding value and potentially higher rate of genetic gain. Another key thing that's come about from combined LAMBPLAN is the increased genomic reference via the dam side. So in the current terminal and maternal analyses, research data or resource flock data has been allocated to the relevant analysis based on the sire breed. As we're combining the two analyses together for combined LAMBPLAN, we can use all of that dam side information, therefore increase our genomic reference for the dam side for resource flock data, which is a really key enhancement that we've been able to make through combining the two data sets together. You'll see that composite breeds have a greater benefit where we've increased the genomic reference for foundation breeds for terminals and maternals, just because those composite breeds share more genes across the population rather than isolated breeds such as a Poll Dorset or a Border Leicester. So in terms of the impact of the better utilisation of genomic information, we have a moderate impact on both the ranking between animals as well as the breeding value itself when we've made updates to genetic groups. Where we've increased the genomic reference, this has a moderate impact again on the ranking between animals as well as the breeding value itself. And we have a high impact on both breeding values and ranking between animals as a result of increasing the weighting on the genomic relationship in the combined LAMBPLAN analysis.